Welcome to the Marriage Puzzle Podcast with Julie and Thomas Hobby. We are marriage coaches who help couples with pain points about money, intimacy, and communication go from being overwhelmed to being secure in their marriage.
If this is your first time listening to us, thanks for checking out our podcast. And don't forget to subscribe and leave us a rating and a review. Let's dive into this episode.
Hey, everybody. I want to ask a question. Do you control stress in your life, or does stress control you?
Good question.
We're talking about personal stress in marriage because, personal stress is only related to that one person. But when you're married, what you carry really affects your spouse, whether you think so or not. And Thomas and I carry stress very differently. I would say you carry it more internally and you're quiet about it. When you're stressed out, you kind of retract. And I'm the opposite. When I'm stressed out, you know it, and I'm more external in that. And there's no right or wrong approach to an internal or external response to stress, but we're here to tell you from personal experience that it both approaches affect the other person. You know, it has affected our relationship and our marriage, and we've had to work through things. And so hopefully in this episode 43, we can talk through personal stress, what it is, how it affects you personally, how it can affect your marriage, and of course, tips to improve that so your marriage can thrive.
Yeah, one of the things that we had a really cool opportunity to do was take the assessment that we give to all the couples that we coach. We took it ourselves, and in the assessment, it talks about it gives us a personal stress profile. It lists out some of the things that stress us out individually, and it lists them under categories of very often, sometimes, things like that. And so we got the opportunity to see that ourselves before we, coached anybody else. And so that was really cool. And, we just wanted to share some
I was going to say, what stresses you out, Thomas?
We just wanted to share some of our personal results. So on Julie's list, no, I'm just kidding. I'll let you read your own. Some of the things that stress me out are lack of time for family, lack of time for friends, lack of time for myself. There seems like there's a theme here.
Just time. Not enough time stresses you out.
And also time related, too much to do around the home. And so just not having enough time to do everything is one of my big top stressors. And, there's probably other things as well, but that was just a central focal point when we took this assessment.
Yeah, and what was interesting on mine is I don't think I could have articulated what stresses me out until it lists stuff that I'm like, oh yeah, that's what it is. So mine is more on like my job, honestly, not this job, right? But just job security in general, and income and that kind of those motivators. Which can be positive sometimes, but in an unhealthy manner. I scored pretty high that those are on my personal stress profile. And so we're very different in what stresses us out and like I said earlier, in how we handle them. But that's what I love about this assessment, because it can examine each individual personal stress levels, and it's like over the last year, so it's really relevant. And then we can help kind of navigate those things.
Yeah.
We've had to in our own relationship as well.
Yeah. I mean, if you have a very high level of personal stress, it can create demands on your time and energy. And it can start to feel draining on you. It can suck your time away. It can suck your energy away. And the stress may also contribute to problems with physical health, relational health in your marriage, emotional health. In fact, we wanted to do a little research on this going into the podcast to determine some of the effects that it can have. And we found some information from the Mayo Clinic that talks about some of the common effects that stress can have on your body, on your mood, and on your behavior. So we're just going to rattle these off real quick. On your body, some of the common effects stress can have are it can cause headaches, muscle tension or pain, chest pain, fatigue, change in sex drive, which is going to then lead to relational issues in your marriage. That's an ad lib from me. That doesn't say that on here. But if your sex drive is lower, it's going to naturally create some additional tension in your marriage, upset stomach, and sleep problems.
Yeah, and then on your mood, because I've personally experienced anxiety. I think that's huge when you're stressed. So restlessness, lack of motivation or focus, which is really interesting. I think when I have the most to do, I should be focused, and that's when I'm just like, I'm not motivated to do anything. And you kind of swing the the opposite way when you're stressed. But you still feel overwhelmed, and so then you're irritable or angry and sad and depressed, and that's why stress can affect, these are affecting your mood, but it'll affect your spouse because of your mood.
Yeah, if these things are happening to you, it's just going to drag them down because they're there to, help you and support you as much as possible, but they can only carry so much too. So, and they have their own stuff going on. So we're talking about personal stress. We're not talking about stress on the relationship necessarily, but each individual's personal stress and how that affects each other. Some of the effects that stress can have on your behavior: overeating or undereating, having angry outbursts, drug or alcohol misuse, tobacco use, social withdrawal, or exercising less often. Those are some of the effects that stress can have, some of the physical and mental and emotional effects that stress can have in our lives. But some stress is self-inflicted, right?
Yes, I've learned that. I think a lot of times because of my high stress comes from work, and it was listed that we can then often blame someone else for the stress that we have. Like, it's my boss who's stressing me out, or this project is stressing me out. And sometimes that is valid. And sometimes,
if your boss is listening to this right now,
it's not.
It's probably not happening right now.
Like,
sorry, I messed you up.
No,
but
I'm just saying,
wanted to make sure.
I was saying, if it's a project at work, then it could be seasonal stress.
Yeah.
And that probably is causing that could be the reason for the stress.
Yeah.
Your boss could be putting pressure on you.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of the times, this has been very eye-opening within the last year to change my anxiety and stress around, was to realize that, like you said, some stress is self-inflicted. And if you can learn to remove self-inflicted stress, you'll reduce your personal stress, which will then improve your marriage overall.
Well, I just want to add something onto that real quick. I mean, I love what you're saying about some of the stress is self-inflicted, but can be outside influenced. I think that's a good way to say what you were trying to say about, your boss putting pressure. That can be an outside influence, but you're the one who you can control some of how much that affects you. And you're going to talk about some of the ways, some of the self-inflicted stress.
Yeah, five things that could be self-inflicted stress. The first one is unnecessary emotional stress. So how much do you just worry about things that you can't even control?
Right. And
so I would say even fear is self-inflicted stress. Mm-hmm. And that was with the inadequate income and things. If you've listened to our podcast and hopefully our financial story, from hitting rock bottom to becoming completely debt free, and just the stress of that, but it can still creep back of just worrying about going back there. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that's just out of your control, and that's self-inflicted unnecessary emotional stress that then you're carrying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and another one is undisciplined time management stress. I am often a procrastinator, and I personally, I feel like I tend to work better when I'm kind of down to the wire. That's probably just because that's what I do most frequently. I don't often plan enough in advance.
There's difference between pressure and stress.
Right.
Like, sometimes the pressure can be a good motivator, mm-hmm. but if you keep procrastinating and you don't hit the deadline or whatever, then that's self-inflicted stress.
If you do it to yourself over and over again, it becomes self-inflicted.
It's not needed.
Because it's something you can control and change. If I'm often a procrastinator, I could get organized, I could remove distractions, and I could get things done earlier or on time and not have to wait until the last minute.
The third one, self-inflicted, would be unrealistic expectations, which causes stress. So if you lower your expectations, you could lower your stress level. But this is a huge tip in marriage, because I think we can look to other couples and try to make perfection the standard, and that's just not possible. So, just kind of reality check on there to not have unrealistic expectations in whatever category it is, but especially in your marriage, that could just cause stress.
Yeah, perfection can't be the standard. I mean, that's something that you have to realize and eliminate out of your thought process, that perfection just can't be attained. And so, especially in your marriage, especially when you're working with humans.
You can't be perfect. Your spouse can't be perfect. Your boss can't be perfect. That's like whatever category the kids you're raising are not going to be perfect.
Yeah.
And so I think, we just have these unrealistic expectations because of the world we live in now and the media influence. And if we just lowered those or just changed them to realistic expectations, then your stress would be reduced. Number 4 is underdeveloped maturity stress. So that's something I think that's affecting a lot in our world today as well. People have like identity issues. We don't work through those. Work to discover a sense of purpose and direction for your own life first, and then also in your marriage. Those are just things that, just work part of growing up and you never arrive. But I think just kind of some of those things, we just kind of get lost in what am I made to do? Who am I? Those things can affect you personally and in turn affect your marriage. But again, they're still self-inflicted.
Yeah. And number 5, useful relationship. Useful.
That would be opposite of useful. These are negative.
Redo. Number 5, unhelpful relationship stress. So something you can do with this is to confront any and all ongoing relational conflict so that you can be at peace. If it's outside of your marriage that the relational conflict is happening, you might need to create and stick to boundaries. So if you have that family member or friend that's just causing you additional unnecessary stress, relational stress, that's then leaking into your marriage, you're going to have to put up a boundary and prevent that from getting in. If there is that relational stress in your marriage, that's an area where you might need to get help. You might not be able to do that one totally on your own.
I think this is huge because of extended family members, which we have previous episodes on and things like that. But the unhelpful relationship stress, if you don't mind, this is in our notes, so not prepared. But just recently, Thomas, you've done that with a friend of yours of like kind of creating those boundaries that it was an unhelpful relationship.
Right.
And when you put up those boundaries, I've seen a change in you, kind of just like living life lighter and freer, because sometimes you do have to say no to someone, and it allowed you to say yes to then me or our family, and I've just seen just that stress come off of you.
Well, and most likely we all have a handful of relationships, either by way of our own or by marriage, some of your family members that you married into, things like that can cause that relational stress. And you do have to at some point just set the boundary and say, look, this is just not healthy for me or my family, and it's not going to work. Doesn't mean you love that friend or family member any less. You just have to choose to prioritize what is most important to you in life. And if having that outside influence, or maybe it's drama that gets brought in, maybe it's gossip or something that you always get sucked into or something like that, it could be a number of factors. But if those things are happening, you're the one, the part that you can control what that other person does with their life or how they run things. But what you can control is how much you allow that person into yours. And so, or that relationship to continue.
Yeah, I think that's what the difference is what I said about your boss. Like you can blame them. My boss is stressing me out. This friend, this family member, they're the cause of the stress in my life. And instead of looking, instead of pointing at them, point the finger at yourself and look, what self-inflicted stress am I allowing with this, unhelpful relationship, and what changes or boundaries can I create that'll make me a healthier person, and in turn our marriage as well.
Yeah. So we want to always try and leave you with as much practical advice and things that can help you going out of this podcast to do something in the real world, in your relationship, in your marriage, to help you help things get better. And so we've got a handful of things here, that tips that can help manage your stress, that we think can help manage your stress. And so number one, surprise, surprise here. I'll give you guys a second to guess what you think it will be. Cue that Jeopardy theme. But communicate to your spouse what you're stressed out about.
Talk about it.
Communicate what you're stressed out about. They're there to help you bear many of the burdens that you're going through. They can't bear all of them. Like you said, if you have a project going on at your work, they can't go to your work and do your project for you in most scenarios. But they can help you at home try to manage that. And if that's something that's stressing you out and you've got to put in some extra time to work on this product, if you talk to them about it and you say, hey, do you think you could, cook dinner tonight so I don't have to do that, so I can spend that extra 30 minutes doing this? Or could you take the kids out for a walk so I can just have a few more minutes of quiet to try and finish this? Things like that, your spouse would be happy. They can't read your mind and know what's stressing you out, but they would most likely be happy to do anything that they can to help you that's within their power.
I want to expand on this one before we continue, because we have 8 here and we will rapid fire the rest of them probably, but yes, we say talk about it like on every episode. That's our tip. But communication is so important to us. And that's why I want to expand here, because we say communicate it. But earlier at the top of the episode, I said you and I, Thomas and I, we internalize or externalize stress differently. Mm-hmm. And so if I can just speak to you, you kind of like internalize it and bottle it up. Mm-hmm. And that's where you've had to learn to communicate and open up to express how you feel. Because I'm like, I know you're off, but I don't know why. I don't know what's wrong. Whereas you can see it and you can hear it. I've had to learn how to communicate well,
clearly,
calmly, to express how I'm feeling without attacking Thomas and making it like his fault that he's the victim when I'm just talking about some other external stressor. So that's why I'm saying communicate is key, because if we're not just like talk about it in your own personality and it'll be, like these tips that Marriage Puzzle is giving are not working, but you have to either, depending on your personality, learn to open up and speak up, or learn to calmly and clearly, without attacking, communicate.
Yeah, in either one of those scenarios, your spouse can't read your mind and what's going on. And in both of those scenarios you talked about with each of us, one of the things that you didn't say was we are clearly telling our spouse what is going on in our lives, that I'm just doing it quietly and you're doing it loudly, for lack of better words.
Yeah.
Like you didn't say that either one of us was clear, like communicating that. Both of us are showing the stress in certain ways. We both know that something weird is going on with the other person, but your spouse can't read your mind in either of those scenarios. Just because I'm being more reserved about it and bottling it up doesn't mean you can read my mind any better than if it's you're wearing your emotions on your sleeve, I can read your mind about what exactly is going on. So you have to be clear with your spouse. They can't read your mind. So be clear when telling them what is going on in your life, and make sure that you're clear to let them know, hey, I'd really like your help fixing this issue, or I just need to express what's going on and have you listen. Be clear about that, whether you need them to fix it or listen, so that they don't try to do the wrong thing. And then, because they don't want to get in trouble for trying to help you think through and brainstorm and fix a problem if you just wanted them to listen and hear you out so you could vent. So make sure you're clear about that.
Yeah, I think that leads into number 2 of when you're communicating it, your spouse can then help you reduce triggers of stress. So these are, self-inflicted and externally inflicted. We all have triggers that set us off. So you can be calm and then all of a sudden get stressed.
Mm-hmm.
And so the more you communicate it in that safe marriage space, then, sometimes you need someone to then help point out what those triggers are.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can begin to reduce those triggers that set you off to be stressful. Like, hey, don't worry about something that you can't control.
Right. Well, and we talked about unhelpful relationships. I'm struggling with that word. Unhelpful relationship stress. And if we kind of circle that back into what you were talking about with regarding work, if you're stressed about something that's going on at work, one of the triggers may be getting messages from work on your off time. Like when you come home and you're clocked out at the end of the night, and you're trying to have dinner with your family or spend time with your spouse, and you keep getting messages about work, that's going to keep stressing you out. Your boss isn't even in the room. Your boss is probably sending you those messages and they're going on with their night just fine and spending time with their family and spouse. But now it's affecting you. So you can put some boundaries in place even with that to say, okay, you know what? I'm going to turn off my work notifications when possible, of course. I mean, if you're, like a healthcare worker or something where you're on call, you may not be able to do that. And that's just kind of a life rhythm that you've chosen, and that's totally okay. But for other possibilities, if you can reduce that stress by just saying, you know what? I'm going to turn work off literally from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. every night. I mean, just think about how much those few hours of direct attention to your family and not getting dragged back into work mode are going to change your the stress and the effects of stress on your body.
That's good. Interchange, triggers to boundaries and setting your priorities straight.
Yeah. Number 3, exercise regularly. And this can include having sex.
Oh,
now, I mean, maybe your sex life is a workout, and that's totally fine. I mean, if you're burning that many calories, more power to you. But know that it's kind of tongue in cheek. Those two things are a little bit different. But sex can help reduce stress. However, if you're coming home from a stressful day at work, you can't just go straight into the bedroom and have sex. That's really probably physically going to be difficult to do. So you need to make sure you set the mood. You come home from work, if you've had a stressful day, sex can be a great stress reliever to kind of really shake those emotions off, but you need to kind of give yourself that transition time out of work, find something to do to, get into home mode, then set the mood with your spouse at some point, have dessert together, do something relaxing, massage, something like that to kind of change over into that mood. Then sex can ultimately help be a stress reliever, but exercise regularly as well.
Number 4, say no. Say no to either people, the boundaries, or to things. We've seen a lot of people who are stressed then kind of get into bad habits. A stress reliever might be shopping and spending money, and then they're more stressed out because of their lack of income and things like that. And it's just this vicious cycle. So sometimes you need to learn to say no to someone or something, and sometimes you need to learn to say no to yourself so that you're not ultimately stressed.
Yeah, and I also want to add, we've also seen people who don't say no to doing things with other people. And so they max out their calendars and they're doing something every night with someone else besides being at home with their family. And that can be just as much of a stressor, having to go somewhere every night and kind of be on stage or perform, after you've already had that stress at work, and or if you're a stay-at-home parent, you've already had that stress all day long with your kids. You know what we're talking about, and then you have to go somewhere and turn that personality back on again when you really just want to relax. So say no to some events and build some time into your schedule for you to say no. Block some times off. If an event happens, no, sorry, we're not going to go. That's our family night. I mean, we have family night once a week and it's very rare that we shut that down and go do something else. I mean, certain things it has to move around, but not often.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's then if you're a people pleaser, that's when you need to learn to say no. Um, but then depending on your personality, we'd say one of the tips, number 5, is to spend time with family and friends.
Right.
So if it's lacking
It's a
in your
balancing
life,
act. Yeah.
yeah, and that's where Thomas was saying we do prioritize. It's usually Saturday nights for us as family night. But if something came up on the calendar for a Saturday, we always then move family night to either Friday night or Sunday night. It's always the same weekend that we have that. We have that for dates as well. What's your marriage night? What's your family night? And then what can you have the me time or the friend time and things like that to help reduce stress.
Yeah. Number 6 is laugh. Keep a sense of humor. Oh man, what that was perfect timing that you
know, I'm
actually
laughing,
laughed.
but
I didn't. We did not have that planned where she like fake laughed. She actually just
trying
really
not
did.
to be stressed, but I'm laughing because this is actually comes really hard for me. So it
Yeah.
sounds like, just laugh it off. This is hard when you're not naturally, I don't know if I'm not naturally joyful or whatever.
I don't know. Maybe you aren't joyful. I don't know.
When I'm stressed, I'm working on it, but when I am uber stressed, it's hard to make me laugh. Even watching a funny, like a comedian, I'm like, this is stupid. This is not funny. I'm just in a like bad mood. And so I've had to learn how to laugh outside of being stressed so that I can lighten up more.
Yeah.
In life.
Yeah.
and just not be stressed. But it's funny because it
There
can
are
come naturally to Thomas and not to me.
Oh, we are totally different in this regard. There are literal times where we're just watching a show and she actually laughs, and I pause the show and literally say to her, "You just laughed
I
at
think you
that."
fall in love with me more when I do that.
Absolutely, yeah. It's
Like, what? You just laughed out loud. But then in turn, I get annoyed when you're watching a show alone and I may be in the other room and you're just laughing out loud. I'm like, how can you just laugh out loud? Nobody's there to laugh with. I don't understand.
I am kind of a problem when it comes to comedy shows and things like that. I've had people turn around and look at me because I'm laughing so hysterically.
Yeah, at a live show.
At a live show, things like
Probably
that.
why I'm so embarrassed. But yeah, I've like I said, been really working on this. Specifically in the last year, and I'm having a lot more fun just laughing and enjoying life. But if it's hard for you, I want to hear from you because I feel so alone in this personality where I can laugh now, but when I'm stressed, things are just not funny to me at
all. Number 7, make sure you set aside time for hobbies, that me time that you need to just kind of do something on your own, or maybe it's a hobby with your spouse that you like to do together. That's okay as well. Just make sure you set aside time to do that.
And then last but not least, write out what is stressing you out. So you can, let's first ones talk about it, but you might need to write it down and then cross it off. What can you eliminate? But everything you do, you can prioritize. Or if you're overwhelmed, like I said, if it's more from that,
like your to-do list is too long.
Yeah, like my to-do list is never going to end. And so a practice I've learned is to write it down. I always say if it's on the list, I will get to it eventually. But then each day I pick my top 3. And that's a practice you do as well. And that's been life-changing. Because then if the day doesn't go as planned or, it's still stressful, at least I know I accomplished these 3 things. And these were the big 3 things that I needed to move along. And outside of a work context, that could be in your home or for your children or whatever. And you can still feel accomplished and less overwhelmed and less stressed if you just write it down, identify it, and then check it off. I like to check it off.
I want to circle back to something really quickly, though, about not striving for perfection, because we could even get caught up in striving for perfection in your top 3. You write down 3 things that you need to get done and strive for perfection. Perfection is getting all 3 things done, right? If you only get 2 done, don't beat yourself up over that. Think of it this way, that 3rd thing, that's just your number 1 for tomorrow.
Yeah.
There
That's
could
good.
be some things that, obviously scenarios that may require you, to feel that way. But I think that if you write your top three, just know that those are more goals. They're not demands. They're not necessarily requirements. Um, you can only fit so many things in before you then are stressed that you're not spending time with your family or that you're not getting home to your spouse, and where's the balance, right? Do you want to, live your life being stressed and chained to your work or your to-do list or something like that? I would imagine probably not. And so doing those top three, I love that exercise. It's great. It's really been beneficial for me. But just remember, give yourself still that room to not have time for one, and you are just setting your goals for the day. So
yeah, thanks again for hanging out with us this week as we talk about personal stress for you and in your marriage. We're going to be posting some quotes and more helpful tips along with for personal stress on our social media, Facebook and Instagram this week. So follow along with us at Marriage Puzzle, or you can check out our website, marriagepuzzle.com, for information on marriage coaching and books we recommend and things like that. And as always, we look forward to you joining us next week, where together we'll work on marriage one puzzle piece at a time. See you later.
Have a great week.